Under the bright lights of the circus tent, we see laughter, wonder, and spectacle. Children cheer, parents clap, and performers promise the impossible. But behind the painted smiles and glittering costumes lies a darker truth. For centuries, wild animals have been caged, chained, and forced to perform unnatural tricks for human amusement. And sometimes, they reach their breaking point. When elephants trample trainers, when tigers turn on their masters, when lions leap into crowds, these are the moments the circus tries to hide, but the footage remains. In this episode, we pull back the curtain on 10 of the most infamous and horrifying circus animal attacks ever recorded. These are not just accidents, they are warnings, a reminder that the wild cannot be tamed, no matter how tight the chains or how strong the cage. This is fierce, and these are the circus tragedies you were never meant to see. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Number 1. Tyke the Elephant, Honolulu, Hawaii, 1994. A packed crowd gathered under the big top, expecting an afternoon of spectacle and laughter. Instead, they witnessed one of the most horrifying scenes in circus history. Tyke, a 21-year-old African elephant, had spent years enduring brutal training, chained confinement, and relentless performances. On that day, something inside her broke. As the show began, Tyke entered the ring, but her behavior was different, nervous, agitated. Suddenly, she charged her trainer, Alan Campbell, tossing him like a rag doll before trampling him. The crowd screamed as panic spread. Tyke then attacked her groomer, seriously injuring him, before smashing through the circus tent and into the streets of Honolulu. For nearly half an hour, Tyke rampaged through downtown, crushing cars and scattering terrified pedestrians. Police arrived, but their weapons seemed useless against the massive elephant. Witnesses described the scene as a war zone, as Tyke staggered, wounded, but still fighting. In a chilling finale, police fired nearly 90 bullets before she collapsed and died on the hot pavement, her massive body surrounded by flashing lights and crying onlookers. The tragedy was more than just a freak accident. It became a turning point. The horrifying footage circulated worldwide, sparking outrage about animal cruelty in circuses. Tyke's death became a symbol of the suffering elephants endured under the big top, fueling bans and reforms across the globe. But for the hundreds of witnesses that day, the memory was seared forever. An animal pushed past her breaking point, finally fighting back. Number 2. Mary the Elephant, Erwin, Tennessee, 1916. In the early 1900s, traveling circuses were the hottest ticket in town, rolling into small communities with promises of wonder and amazement. The Sparks world-famous shows brought with it its star attraction, Mary, a 5-ton Asian elephant dubbed the largest living land animal on Earth. For years, she marched in parades and performed tricks. But in September 1916, her story took a gruesome turn. While parading through the streets of Kingsport, Tennessee, Mary's inexperienced new trainer, Red Eldridge, prodded her with a bullhook after she reached for a watermelon rind. In a flash, she picked him up with her trunk, slammed him to the ground, and crushed his head beneath her massive foot. The circus now faced a public relations nightmare. Crowds demanded that Mary be destroyed, branding her a murderous elephant. Local officials refused to let her return unless she was executed. What followed was one of the most shocking spectacles in American history. In the nearby town of Erwin, a railroad crane was brought to a yard. Before a crowd of thousands, Mary was led to the gallows, a heavy chain fastened around her neck. As the crane lifted her into the air, the chain snapped, sending Mary crashing to the ground with a broken hip. Horrified gasps erupted. The workers tried again. This time the chain held. Mary dangled lifeless, her massive body swaying in the air. The brutal hanging of murderous Mary remains one of the darkest chapters in circus history, remembered not only as a tragic death of a misunderstood animal, but as a damning symbol of human cruelty cloaked as entertainment. Number 3. Tilikum the Orca, SeaWorld, Orlando, 2010. Though not a traditional circus, marine parks shared the same DNA of animal exploitation. Wild creatures forced to perform unnatural tricks for applause. And in 2010, the world watched in horror as Tilikum, a killer whale at SeaWorld Orlando, revealed the dark cost of captivity. Tilikum's life was one of trauma from the start. Captured in Icelandic waters in 1983, he spent decades in small tanks, shuffled between parks, and involved in 2 previous human deaths before the tragedy that would define him. Despite his history, SeaWorld continued using him in shows. On February 24, 2010, he was scheduled to perform with Dawn Brancheau, one of the park's most experienced trainers. At the end of the show, Dawn lay at the pool's edge to reward Tilikum. In an instant, the 12,000-pound Orca lunged, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her underwater. The crowd, thinking it was part of the act, clapped until the horrifying reality sank in. Witnesses saw Dawn being thrashed violently, her body repeatedly dragged beneath the surface as panicked staff tried to intervene. For nearly 30 minutes, Tilikum refused to release her. By the time rescuers recovered her body, it was too late. The incident sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. SeaWorld initially downplayed it as a freak accident, but the truth was undeniable. Captivity had driven Tilikum into psychological torment. The attack reignited debates over animal welfare and led to the explosive documentary Blackfish, 2013, which revealed systemic abuse within marine parks. Public outrage grew, attendance plummeted, and eventually SeaWorld announced the end of orca breeding. For many, Dawn's tragic death and Tilikum's violent defiance became a chilling reminder. No matter how controlled the environment, wild animals can never be tamed entertainment. Number 4. Samantha the Elephant. Florida State Fairgrounds, 1992. On a warm February evening in Tampa, Florida, the Florida State Fair was in full swing. Families filled the big top, children clutching cotton candy, waiting for the next dazzling act. But what unfolded that night was something no one could forget. Samantha, a 20-year-old circus elephant, was one of the highlights of the evening. For years, she had been paraded in circles, forced to balance on stools, and made to perform tricks under the hot lights. On this particular night, in 1992, as the crowd clapped and the ringmaster shouted, Samantha snapped. Without warning, she turned on her trainer, charging and trampling him to death in front of horrified spectators. Authorities rushed in, surrounding Samantha. The decision was swift and merciless. The elephant had to be put down. She was shot multiple times until she collapsed on the fairgrounds floor. For circus fans, it was a chilling reminder that beneath the costumes and choreography, these were wild animals forced into submission. Number 5. The Ringling Brothers Elephants, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1950. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus was America's crown jewel of entertainment in the mid-20th century. With its vast tents, booming parades, and exotic animal acts, it embodied the spectacle of the greatest show on earth. But in Pittsburgh in 1950, the magic dissolved into terror. During a crowded evening performance, a group of elephants was paraded into the ring, expected to perform a series of choreographed routines. But suddenly, something went wrong. Whether spooked by noise, stress, or mistreatment, the elephants bolted. Trumpeting loudly, they broke formation and stampeded into the audience. Dozens were injured in the frenzy, some seriously, as the animals barreled through the crowd before being corralled by panicked trainers. Although no deaths were reported, the incident left a trail of broken bones, crushed seating, and psychological scars. For Ringling Brothers, it was a public relations disaster. While the company initially blamed unforeseen circumstances, insiders admitted the truth. The elephants were often subjected to harsh conditions, long transports, and aggressive training methods that could trigger sudden rebellion. The 1950 Pittsburgh incident reinforced a sobering reality. In a circus, the line between entertainment and tragedy was razor thin. Behind the illusion of control, these enormous animals carried both immense strength and pent-up rage, and when unleashed, the results were catastrophic. Number 6. Siegfried and Roy. Montecore the Tiger, Las Vegas, 2003. In the glitzy world of Las Vegas entertainment, few acts were as iconic as Siegfried and Roy. Known for their dazzling illusions and white tigers, their performances symbolized magic, danger, and exotic glamour. For decades, the duo thrilled audiences at the Mirage Hotel, where their bond with the animals seemed unbreakable. But on October 3, 2003, that illusion was shattered. That night, before a sold-out crowd, Roy Horn stepped into the spotlight with Montecore, a 400-pound white tiger who had performed with them for years. The routine began as usual, carefully choreographed movements, bright lights, and gasps of wonder from the audience. Then, something went horribly wrong. Montecore suddenly latched onto Roy's neck with his massive jaws. Gasps turned to screams as the tiger dragged him off stage, blood pouring from the wound. Miraculously, Roy survived, but just barely. The attack crushed his windpipe and severed arteries, leaving him partially paralyzed and ending his career. Siegfried and Roy's legendary act closed permanently, marking the end of an era in Vegas history. Theories swirled about what caused the attack. Was Montecore protecting Roy after sensing a medical episode, or was it a breakdown after years of confinement? To this day, debate continues, but one thing was clear. No matter how close the bond, wild predators retain their primal instincts. The incident became one of the most infamous animal attacks in entertainment history, a chilling reminder that even in the most controlled settings, the wild cannot truly be tamed. Number 7. The Great India Circus Tiger Attack. Jabalpur, India, 2014. In the heart of Jabalpur, India, the Great India Circus had drawn a massive crowd. Parents and children flocked to the arena, eager to watch the majesty of lions and tigers up close. But what was supposed to be a night of awe quickly spiraled into horror. During a tiger act, one of the massive cats grew restless. Trainers cracked whips, pushing the animal to perform under the blinding spotlights and deafening crowd noise. Suddenly, the tiger turned, not on its handlers, but toward the audience. Trainers rushed forward with poles and fire, frantically trying to drive the tiger back. By the time they succeeded, it was too late. The boy was killed, his family devastated in front of hundreds of witnesses. It reignited fiery debates in India about whether circuses had any place in modern society. Number 8. The Terrell Jacobs Lion Attack, Cleveland, Ohio, 1942. Terrell Jacobs was no ordinary circus performer. He was a lion tamer, billed as the Lion King of the circus. With Barnum and Bailey in the 1940s, his acts were legendary. He stepped into cages with up to 40 lions and tigers at once, using only a whip and a chair to maintain control. For audiences, it was the ultimate thrill. But in Cleveland in 1942, Jacobs' daring act nearly became his death. That night, Jacobs entered the steel cage, surrounded by roaring big cats. The crowd gasped as he cracked his whip, forcing the lions into synchronized poses. But then, chaos erupted. One of the lions, stressed and provoked, lunged at Jacobs. Another quickly joined in. Within seconds, the king of the circus was pinned to the ground, claws raking his body. The audience screamed as assistants rushed forward, using poles and fire to beat the lions back. Jacobs was mauled severely, his arms shredded, his torso covered in deep gashes. Somehow, against all odds, he survived. But the attack left him permanently scarred, both physically and emotionally. Jacobs, however, continued performing for years, claiming he understood the risks and loved his animals. Number 9. The Cole Brothers, Elephant Rampage, Palm Bay, Florida, 1989. The Cole Brothers Circus was well known across small-town America, hauling its colorful tents and exotic animals from city to city. But in 1989, in Palm Bay, Florida, 3 elephants would turn a night of laughter into chaos. During the evening show, the elephants were paraded into the ring, adorned with glittering costumes. Children clapped as the massive creatures were made to balance on stools and march in formation. Suddenly, something spooked them. The elephants charged into the stands, toppling bleachers and sending families running for their lives. Parents clutched their children as chairs and railings collapsed under the animals' weight. Nearly a dozen people were injured, some trampled, others cut and bruised in the desperate rush to escape. Handlers scrambled with bull hooks and chains, but the elephants continued their rampage, smashing equipment and crushing parts of the performance area. Eventually, the chaos subsided, but the damage was done. Families were traumatized, and the circus faced lawsuits and furious headlines. The rampage at Palm Bay became a symbol of the risks ignored for the sake of profit. For those in attendance, the memory was seared forever. 3 giants of the wild, forced into chains, finally breaking free, if only for a moment, in a terrifying explosion of power. And finally, number 10, a caged lion attacks trainer, Ukraine Circus, 2010. In 2010, a traveling circus in Ukraine promised families a night of magic and wonder. The star attraction, a lion performance where trainers demonstrated their control over the king of beasts. But in a matter of seconds, the show turned into a nightmare. As the trainer cracked his whip, the lions circled under the bright spotlights. But one lion grew restless. With a sudden burst of speed, it lunged, knocking the trainer to the ground. The predator's powerful jaws clamped down, raking claws tearing at flesh. Miraculously, the man survived but suffered catastrophic injuries, including deep lacerations and permanent scars. Videos of the attack spread quickly online, shocking international audiences. The images of terrified families and the brutal reality of lions reclaiming their instincts ignited outrage. From Honolulu to Ukraine, from the glittering lights of Las Vegas to the small towns of Tennessee, these stories share one haunting truth: wild animals do not belong on stage. Every stampede, every mauling, every desperate act of rebellion was not random. It was the inevitable result of captivity, abuse, and exploitation. For the victims, both human and animal, the circus was never just entertainment. It was a ticking time bomb. Today, many countries have banned wild animals in circuses. Some of these tragedies sparked real change, but in other corners of the world, the shows go on, and the risks remain. As the lights fade and the crowds go home, we're left with one question: how many more must suffer before the curtain falls for good? This has been Fierce. Stay alert, stay curious, and remember, nature will always fight back.